Shocking truth. 8 common fruits that can devastate senior health overnight. Are you at risk? The sun was setting like a fiery ball, casting eerie shadows on the quiet suburban streets. In a world where juicy apples and ripe bananas filled kitchen counters, a chilling secret lurked beneath their vibrant skins. Most people had no idea these seemingly innocent fruits could spiral a senior's health into chaos overnight. Was it a cruel joke or a shocking truth? The clock ticked, and time was running out at the local park. Laughter echoed as kids played. But off to the side, old Mr. Jenkins sat on a bench, clutching his chest. Just last week, he had enjoyed a ripe pear, savoring its sweetness. But then came the sudden dizziness, the cold sweats, and a racing heart. Was it just a heart attack or something else? Many assumed it was age catching up with him. Could that pear have held the key to an unseen danger? Whispers circulated among the gathered crowd. Did you hear what happened to him? It was that darn fruit, said a woman, her voice trembling. A friend of mine had the same thing happen after eating cherries. The murmurs grew louder, creating an atmosphere thick with suspense and apprehension. It felt as if something wicked was brewing beneath the surface, lurking behind every fruit basket. And then, there was the shocking truth about avocados. Perfectly green and creamy, they were a brunch favorite. But when consumed in excess, just the smallest slip on that seemingly smooth surface, trouble could spiral. The way they reacted with certain blood pressure medications could spell disaster. Right then, a grandma nearby was shaking her head, her face pale. She had always loved her morning smoothie loaded with strawberries. But what if one day, those red beauties turned against her too? What secrets could be hidden in their sweet flesh? The crowd leaned in, eyes wide, united in a collective fear of fruit salad of worry. Hey, before we continue with this amazing story, I need to give you an important heads up. Many subscribers have reported that YouTube unsubscribed them without warning. Take a quick second to check the red button below to make sure you're still subscribed to the channel. I'd hate for you to miss any of the exclusive content coming soon. And while you're there, smash that like button. It really helps me out with the algorithm. Oh, and tell me in the comments, which city are you watching from? I love getting to know every amazing person who's part of this community. Your participation makes all the difference. Let's connect. As the tension mounted, eyes darted from one fruit stand to another. What was safe? Was it the seemingly harmless citrus that could turn a sunny day into a tempest? Or perhaps the grapes, filled with hidden toxins that clung to their skins, ready to wreak havoc? Voices trembled on the verge of panic as the clock ticked, and the reality of simple snacks weighed heavy in the air. Outside, the shadows grew longer, closing in like a predator stalking its prey. An older lady clutched her shopping bag tightly, beads of sweat forming just above her brow. Was today the day that something sinister would finally unveil itself? The question hung in the air. What would happen next? The park had transformed into a hub of anxiety, each passing minute thickening the air with dread. Elderly figures, once carefree, now wore expressions carved by uncertainty. The laughter of the children faded into the background, overshadowed by the ominous fear wrapping around the adults. A sudden commotion broke out near the entrance. A small group had gathered around Mrs. Thompson, a seemingly healthy octogenarian who had just fallen to the ground. Her shopping bag sprawled open, spilling out a variety of fruits: apples, kiwis, and a bushel of ripe blackberries. Was it mere coincidence? Or was this a telltale sign of the dangers hidden in their favorite foods? Well, that's it. I knew those blackberries were trouble. A voice quavered from the crowd, cutting through the noise like a knife. A ripple of gasps echoed as concerned faces turned towards the elderly woman. As Mr. Jenkins' heart had been gripped in fear just days before, so too was Mrs. Thompson's now. Medics arrived, their hurried movements sharpening the tension. The crowd, fueled by unease, exchanged worried glances, murmuring inconclusive theories. "It's all just a coincidence," shouted a man in a faded cap, yet the tremor in his throat betrayed his disbelief. In another corner of the park, young Lucy sat on her swing, unaware of the turmoil around her. She often snacked on strawberries while playing. Suddenly, a sharp pang of worry gripped the adults. Was it safe for children too? The thought sent some rushing toward her with half-formed warnings interrupting her innocent laughter. Across the park, debates ignited about the attributes of different fruits. "I heard bananas are the real villains," one elder claimed, shaking his head vehemently. "Full of potassium, yes, but the sugars can be deadly." Fear was contagious. Everyone began second-guessing their healthful choices. Anxiety swirled as the sun dipped lower, casting sinister shadows. Among the chatter in the gathering crowd, Brenda, a retired nurse, desperately tried to regain control. "Listen, everyone. We need to be rational about this. Not all fruits are dangerous. This panic is only making it worse." But her voice was drowned in a sea of chaos as murmurs morphed into a cacophony of fear. And there were whispers of the mysterious fruit behind it. All fruits thought harmless, yet they could hold perilous risks. One by one, stories trickled in an aunt who became ill from pomegranates, a neighbor who fainted after her morning smoothie loaded with bananas and almonds. Each story added fuel to the fire of collective fear. Brenda watched helplessly as the crowd disbanded, many staggering away to their homes in unease. With every step, they cradled their grocery bags like ticking time bombs. She felt that something needed to be done. People deserved answers, not suspicions. As the last rays of sunlight disappeared and the park settled into a chilly dusk, Brenda pulled out her phone and dialed a number she hadn't thought she'd ever need to call. "Hello, Dr. Carter? We have a problem. A serious problem with fruits," she stammered, dread knotting in her stomach. Worries were morphing into unresolved tensions. Would the trusted doctor have answers? But what if the truth was far more sinister than any of them could have imagined? The clock was ticking, the streets were growing darker, and the very essence of what once nourished them was now the potential architect of their undoing. What would happen when the investigation began? Would any fruit be safe again? Brenda paced her apartment, the phone cradled tight in her palm. Dr. Carter's voice crackled over the line, a mix of professionalism and worry. "What are you saying, Brenda? Are you implying there's something wrong with the fruits?" "It's not just Mrs. Thompson," she replied, her voice trembling slightly. "People are scared. I overheard them talking stories of illness linked to common fruits. It's escalating, and if we don't act soon," she trailed off, the weight of her words settling heavily in the room. "All right, let us meet now," he said decisively. As Brenda shoved her phone into her pocket, a sense of urgency propelled her out the door. The streetlights flickered to life, casting long shadows that clawed at her heels. Anxiety gnawed at her stomach. What if there was a real threat? Would they find something sinister lurking behind the everyday produce? She arrived at the diner just as the rain began to fall, its soft patter against the pavement a feeble counterpoint to her rising anxiety. Inside, the diner was nearly empty, save for a few late-night patrons absorbed in their own thoughts. She spotted Dr. Carter in a booth at the back, his brow furrowed, eyes scanning the door, as if waiting for the worst to walk through. "Brenda!" he called as she approached, urgency in his tone. "Tell me everything." She slid into the booth across from him, the smell of coffee and greasy fries wafting around them, a stark contrast to the tension hanging in the air. "It's spreading. People are terrified. The blackberries, the pomegranates, they think it's a conspiracy." "What do you mean?" Dr. Carter leaned closer, his interest piqued. "Someone, maybe more than one, are targeting these fruits for a reason. I heard whispers about black market fruit being sprayed with something. And now every berry, every apple is under suspicion," Brenda explained, her resolve hardening. Dr. Carter's eyes narrowed as he processed her words. That's a serious allegation. But if that's true, we need samples, evidence, something. Then we need to get to the park, she urged, urgency clamoring in her chest. Many of them left in a panic after Mrs. Thompson fell. If they took their fruits with them, do you think we'll find something? He asked, his skepticism eroded by the gravity of the situation. We have to. If any of them are contaminated, the implication lingered between them, heavy and terrifying. As they stepped back into the rain, the air crackled with electricity. Every person they passed seemed like a ticking clock, each bag a potential threat. Brenda felt her heart race as they approached the park. A wilderness of shadows churned ahead, mysterious and foreboding. Shapes of people drifted in and out of view, some still milling about, clutching their shopping bags like they housed the secrets of their unfolding nightmare. Brenda's throat went dry at the sight of several elderly figures, their eyes darting nervously as they whispered. They were on edge, haunted by the invisible specter lurking behind their healthy choices. Remember what I said? Stay close. We need to find any discarded fruits, trace them back, Dr. Carter instructed, his voice a steadying force against the rising tide of dread enveloping them. With each step deeper into the park, fear clawed at Brenda. What if they found something that could undo them all? Or worse, what if they discovered the danger was more pervasive than they dared imagine? They began searching the area, eyes sweeping over the remains of shopping bags and discarded fruit wrappers. Brenda's heart hammered, desperation compelling her to move faster while her mind raced with possibilities. Look! Dr. Carter called urgently, his finger pointing toward a forgotten shopping bag half hidden beneath a bush. She followed his gaze, a chill creeping down her spine as they approached. Worn and crumpled, the bag brimmed with vibrant, juicy fruits, yet an unsettling feeling traveled through her as she peered inside. Do you see that? Dr. Carter's voice had taken a sharp edge. That shouldn't be there just then. A shriek shattered the tension, piercing the murky depths of the night. An individual stumbled out of the shadows, face pale as they clutched their throat. Oh no, what is happening? Brenda gasped, her heart racing. There was no going back now. The truth was close, ready to unravel in all its terrifying brutality. But just how deep did this mystery go? As Dr. Carter rushed forward, all she could think was not just of the fruit they were chasing, but of the growing horrors that seemed poised to engulf them. What had they stumbled into? And what unseen danger awaited them in the depth of the park? The scream hung in the air, a haunting echo against the rustling leaves. Brenda's body froze, the world shrinking to the gasp of the pale figure ahead. The man staggered, panic etching deep lines into his wrinkled face. He stumbled backward, gasping for breath, his words tangled in a choked sob. Brenda felt the bile rise in her throat. "We need to help him," she shouted, feeling a surge of instinctive urgency. But as she took a single step forward, Dr. Carter caught her arm, his grip firm and unyielding. "Wait!" he hissed, scanning the darkness like a hawk. "We don't know what's going on here." The man fell to his knees, hands clutching his throat, as his face turned an alarming shade of red. A crowd had begun to gather, faces illuminated by the dull glow of the scattered streetlights. Whispers buzzed like angry bees, each word heightening Brenda's sense of foreboding. Is this what people had been afraid of? Was it all circling back to the fruit? Dr. Carter's eyes remained locked on the collapsed man. "Get back!" he shouted to the small crowd that began to close in. The assembled onlookers seemed frozen between horror and instinct, drawn to the spectacle but terrified to draw closer. Brenda's heart raced as she pushed past Dr. Carter, rushing toward the man. "Someone call 911!" she yelled, her voice strained. She knelt beside him, ignoring the dull fear that clawed at the edges of her reason. "Sir, can you talk?" she asked, her hands trembling as she reached for him. "What is wrong?" His eyes rolled back slightly, and Brenda saw beads of sweat forming on his forehead. He raised a trembling hand, gesturing toward the shopping bag that had been abandoned in the bushes. The fruit, he rasped, dripping with desperation. The pomegranate. Something is wrong. Brenda's stomach knotted. She glanced back at Dr. Carter, who was still scanning the area, his brows furrowed deeply. "Get it," he ordered, and Brenda knew the urgency in his voice was not just for the man's safety. The crowd's murmuring grew louder as she crept towards the bag. Every instinct screamed at her to retreat, but she steeled her nerves and reached for the handles, twisting them to reveal the contents. Inside sat a few bruised blackberries, and, tucked away beneath them, a torn plastic wrap that looked suspiciously like it contained blood-stained fruit. "Dr. Carter." The realization hit her like a punch. "There's something in here." The man on the ground let out a series of desperate gasps, arms flailing helplessly. Brenda's pulse quickened with each second ticking away. They needed to act fast. "Someone get water," a voice called from the crowd, but there was a murmur of disbelief mixed with terror. People stepped back, still trapped in their own fear. Brenda fished her phone out of her pocket. Her hand shook as she dialed, heart pounding in her throat, barely able to focus on the numbers. 911, what is your emergency? A calm voice responded. "There's a man here." "He can't breathe," Brenda began, but a blood-curdling shriek erupted from the crowd. She spun, her heart racing as she saw another person collapse nearby. "What is going on?" Dr. Carter shouted, visibly agitated, his own phone in hand. Brenda's breath caught. No! Not another one! Was it happening again? "Get everyone back!" Dr. Carter stomped towards the gathering crowd. "We need to clear this area. It's too dangerous." The panic was contagious. As people scrambled backward, the cries of fear and confusion grew louder, drowning out Brenda's thoughts. She could hardly keep her focus on the man who was still gasping, struggling for air. She glanced at the shopping bag again, her instincts rebelling against her logic. What if the fruit was tainted? What if it spread throughout the crowd like wildfire? A creeping horror settled in her chest, squeezing tighter with each shallow breath the man took. "What is this?" she murmured, fear drumming in her ears. Was this just the beginning? Would more people fall victim to whatever this was? The truth was looming just out of reach, and yet they were stuck in a nightmare unfolding before their eyes. Dr. Carter was already ordering people to stay back, but Brenda's mind raced with unanswered questions. "We have to check the others," she breathed, dreading what she might find. Another gasp broke her thought, eyes widening in terror. But before she could process the enormity of the situation, an ambulance's sirens wailed in the distance, drawing closer. Their salvation was on the way, but would it be enough? Each second stretched agonizingly, and dread pulled in her gut. What if they were too late? The truth was coming fast, and so was the danger that threatened to sweep everyone away. Would they unravel this frightening mystery in time, or would the fruit of their labor turn out to be the very thing that destroyed them? Brenda's heart pounded as the sirens grew louder, slicing through the haze of panic that enveloped the crowd. Faces twisted in fear, eyes darting around, as if the shadows themselves might come to life. She couldn't shake the feeling that they were teetering on the edge of something far worse than a mere medical emergency. "Stay back." Dr. Carter's voice boomed, a lifeline threaded through the chaos. People shuffled away, some casting anxious glances over their shoulders, while others remained rooted to the spot, captivated by the unfolding disaster. The man's breath came in ragged bursts, his eyes pleading as they darted between Brenda and the bag of ominous fruit. "Please, the pomegranates," he gasped, voice cracking. It was as if he were trying to warn them, but the words hung heavy in the air, tinged with foreboding. Brenda felt a shiver creep down her spine. What if this was more than just bad fruit? What if it was deliberate? The thought made her stomach turn, but she forced herself to focus, grasping the handles of the shopping bag tighter. The ambulance screeched to a stop, flashing lights bathing the scene in a frantic rhythm. Paramedics jumped out, their faces set with grim determination. But something inside Brenda twisted with the urgency of the moment. "Over here," she called, waving her arm desperately. As they hurried towards the collapsing man, she could only think of the contents of the bag behind her. "Ma'am, what is happening?" one of the paramedics asked, eyes narrowing in concern as he surveyed the situation. "He can't breathe," Brenda exclaimed, her voice rising above the tumult. "He keeps mentioning pomegranates, and those there." She gestured wildly toward the bag. "They might be the cause." Without waiting for a response, the paramedics got to work, checking the man's vitals, while another member of the team leaned over to examine the bag from a distance. "Keep that away," she shouted, panic threatening to overtake her again. "What if it's toxic?" Dr. Carter stepped closer, his brow furrowed with worry. "We need to isolate the fruit. If it's contaminated, we can't risk it spreading." Brenda's thoughts raced, but her concern wasn't just for the man before them. "What if it's causing others to collapse?" she asked, scanning the crowd where one woman clasped her chest, eyes rolling. "What if it's already started?" Dr. Carter's expression darkened. "We have to act now. Get everyone further back. Notify extra units. We need to contain this." As he barked orders, Brenda felt the ground shift beneath her. Terrifying images flashed through her mind, scenes from news reports where outbreaks had started out as harmless fruit but spiraled into chaos. An invisible threat hung in the chill of the night air, and dread settled in her stomach like a rock. More screams erupted. A man stumbled through the crowd, clutching his throat, eyes wide with fear. "It's spreading," he yelled, and that single word sent ripples of horror through the group. Brenda felt the tenuous control snapping like a fraying wire. "No! It can't be." Her voice faltered as the realization settled in like a lead weight. The ambulance doors swung open, and the paramedics began to bring out equipment, intense focus etching their features. Brenda jumped aside to let them through, her senses on fire. She turned back to Dr. Carter, desperation lining her voice. "We need to check the other people. If this is an outbreak, we can't risk it." Just then, there was another thud. A young woman fell to the ground, arms spasming. Fear shot through the crowd like wildfire, and suddenly it was a stampede. People rushed away from the chaos, their faces twisted in panic and disbelief. "Brenda! Back!" Dr. Carter shouted, grasping her arm tightly. She struggled against his hold, her heart racing. "No! We can't leave them." But as the sirens howled louder and chaos reigned, panic-streaked faces blurred into one swirling mass of horror. She felt torn between the need to help and the dread of what lay unseen in the darkness. "Please," she whispered to herself, barely able to breathe. "We need to find out what's really happening." As the paramedics worked frantically in the sea of turmoil, Brenda's pulse quickened. What if the fruit truly was a death knell? The answers were out there, lurking in the shadows, and she could almost hear them calling her. The sirens began to fade, but the sense of dread only deepened. The night was far from over. The true nightmare had only just begun. What exactly was hidden in those deceptively innocuous pomegranates? What darkness would they unveil next? Brenda's mind whirled as she pulled away from Dr. Carter's grip, propelled by a need to do something, anything. There were lives at stake, and she felt an unyielding pull toward the center of chaos, to those who needed help. "Brenda! Don't!" Dr. Carter's shout broke through the noise, but she was already moving, her feet carrying her through the thrumming crowd. Panic rippled around her, a living thing, and she fought against it, pushing towards the young woman who lay motionless on the ground. Others were falling. She could see them in the distance, an unholy wave cascading through the masses. Brenda's chest tightened. If the pomegranates were indeed the source, they needed to be contained, isolated to prevent further spread. "Hey! Can you hear me?" Brenda knelt by the young woman, checking for any signs of life. Her skin was pale, almost waxy, her chest barely rising and falling. It felt surreal, like a nightmare from which she couldn't wake. The frantic sirens and screams turned into a dull roar around her. Sweat dripped down her back as she looked up, desperately searching for a paramedic. The man was still struggling, and the chaos was simply multiplying. Suddenly, an unnatural silence descended, hanging heavy in the air. The crowd, once frantic, became almost still, as if time had paused. The loud cries of fear faded to whispers. "What just happened?" Brenda asked under her breath, eyes wide. The realization struck her an ominous weight. Then she saw it. An elderly man fell to his knees, his hands clutching his throat, eyes bulging. "Get away from it. The fruit, it's tainted," he coughed out, his voice strangled. A chill raced through Brenda. The truth was echoing in his words, reverberating in her bones. It wasn't just an accident. Something beyond her understanding was happening. "We have to evacuate this area." Dr. Carter's voice cut through the silence, but it was tinged with urgency now. It was a sound Brenda recognized, that mixture of fear and responsibility. "Ma'am." One of the paramedics rushed to her, urgency painted on his face. "We need you to move. We can't risk more people falling." Brenda stood there, frozen, conflict raging within her. Panic or purpose? But the fruit, what if it's a biohazard? "We need to get it to safety. Let the professionals handle it," he snapped, grabbing her shoulder, his grip firm yet frantic. "This is bigger than you realize." Just then, a gasp erupted from the back of the crowd. The man who had first collapsed was suddenly rising, a wild look in his eyes. "No! You don't understand," he shouted, staggering toward Brenda, his hands flailing. "The pomegranates, they're not just poisonous. They have something in them. Something alive." A buzz of disbelief swept through the crowd. "What are you saying?" Brenda shouted back, her heart pounding in response to his chaos. But before he could answer, an explosion of screams filled the air, a cacophony that rolled like thunder through the streets. More people began to fall. Their bodies convulsed violently, a collective wave of horror washing over the crowd. Brenda's breath caught in her throat. This wasn't just a medical emergency. It was a crisis. She felt the pulse of fear, sweeping through her like an electric current, shocking her into action. "Get everyone back!" Dr. Carter was shouting again, his voice barely cutting through the insanity. "Contain the fruit now." Brenda turned to move toward the bag of pomegranates, adrenaline heightening her senses. But just as she reached for the handles, a figure flickered in the shadows, a silhouette she barely recognized, a man from the market, grinning with a malevolent delight. "This is just the beginning," he whispered, and her stomach dropped. With dread blanketing her heart, Brenda wondered what was truly unleashed on this night. What did he mean? What force had the pomegranates set free? As fear gripped her tightly, she felt the unsettling truth rise within. The answers she sought were cloaked in more danger than she ever anticipated. And now, the clock was ticking. What horrific realities would unravel when they dared to face it? Would they have the courage to confront this darkness? The next wave was coming, and they needed to be ready. The ground beneath Brenda's feet seemed to pulsate with dread, the screams and chaos surrounding her almost unreal. She grabbed the pomegranate bag tightly, her heart racing as she felt a series of tremors emanate from deep within her core. The man from the market, with that unsettling grin, faded further into the shadows, leaving her with more questions than answers. "Focus, Brenda. Get it together," she chided herself, forcing her eyes to scan the crowd. The once vibrant market atmosphere now felt like a scene from a horror film, the air thick with terror, people crying out as they collapsed one by one. Panic threatened to swallow her whole, but the nagging pull inside her to act, to save anyone fueled her resolve. She darted toward a pair of paramedics, who were desperately trying to aid a middle-aged woman lying on the ground, her body twitching violently. "What do we do?" Brenda yelled, urgency lacing her voice. "We need to stabilize her." "Get the AED." One of them shouted, and Brenda nodded, sprinting toward the makeshift medical tent set up near the edge of the plaza. She tore past frightened faces peering out from their cocoon of horror, wishing she could grasp their fear and somehow wrangle it back into place. Rounding the corner, she saw the AED, its bright red casing gleaming defiantly in the dim light. As she reached down to grab it, she noticed how the air felt colder, almost as if the world was inhaling expectantly. A foul, sickly smell lingered, like spoiled fruit and decay. She hastened back, but as she approached the crowd, a strange sensation coiled in her stomach. The elderly man, a beacon of desperation, was now staring at her, his eyes wide with that same fear she felt. He pointed toward the edge of the market, where shadows danced unnaturally, flickering like flames. "They're coming for you," he rasped, his voice barely above a whisper yet sharp with urgency. "You need to leave. It's not just the pomegranates. They're summoning something." Brenda hesitated. The chilling notion that whatever had been unleashed could be something more sinister took root in her mind. Her grip on the AED tightened. "What do you mean?" "What do I do?" Before he could respond, more screams erupted around her, nearly deafening. She turned toward the source of the noise, and her blood ran cold. Dark shapes were emerging from the shadows, moving with a purpose that sent chills racing down her spine. "Brenda! We need you!" Dr. Carter's voice echoed, pulling her attention back. She saw him kneeling beside a fallen child, pressing down on their chest, desperately trying to maintain some semblance of hope against the overwhelm of chaos. Racing to their side, Brenda glanced back at the shadows that shifted like a living nightmare, and her determination hardened. She couldn't just stand back. "Clear," Dr. Carter shouted, and she positioned the AED while he stepped aside. The moment the device powered to life, an uneasy flicker of light illuminated their surroundings. For just a moment, there was clarity amid the shadows. A low, guttural sound echoed in the distance, deep and resonant. The figures from the shadows were breaking into the light, revealing ethereal forms, neither human nor animal. They advanced with a predatory grace, eyes glinting like cold steel. Brenda's heart raced, pounding against her rib cage. "What are they?" she gasped, backing away slowly. "We don't have time," Dr. Carter shouted, trying to keep his focus on the child. But Brenda felt the pull of those ominous silhouettes growing stronger, urging her to make a choice they had less than a moment to consider. The whispers of the wind felt tainted, laden with dark promises. What were they summoning? And more importantly, could Brenda find the strength to confront the truth before it all spiraled out of control? In that instant, she understood. They weren't just fighting for their lives. They were facing something that could disrupt the very fabric of reality. "Brenda, now!" Dr. Carter yelled, but as she turned back to help him, the shadows leaped closer, awaiting their moment. The pomegranates rested a few feet away, their crimson skin glistening like a warning. What forces were unleashed, what consequences awaited if she dared to approach them again? With a shocking realization, she knew one thing for certain. Their fight for survival had just begun. But at what cost? As the air crackled with tension and uncertainty surrounding her, Brenda held her breath, and a terrifying thought crawled into her mind. What if the pomegranates were just the beginning? Brenda's heart thundered as she turned back to Dr. Carter, now kneeling desperate next to the child. The electric hum of the AED filled her ears, mixing with the echoing screams that reverberated through the chaotic scene. Those dark shapes continued to advance, closing in like a silent tide intent on consuming everything in its path. "Clear the area," she shouted, her voice rising above the din, but her words were swallowed by the fear spiraling through the crowd. People were stumbling over each other, a wave of panic cascading in every direction. She pushed forward, willing her body to move faster to protect them all. "Brenda! Focus!" Dr. Carter's voice cut through, and she looked down. The child lay limp, pale as the ground, eyes closed tight. Knowing now wasn't the time for hesitation, Brenda pressed the AED to the child's chest. Accepting the shock, the machine's voice rang out, but nothing felt right. The buzz of the device hummed ominously, an echo of the impending danger just a few feet away, the shadows lingering, watching, waiting. "Come on! Come on!" Brenda's fingers trembled, racing against the dread pooling in her stomach. Each second felt like a lifetime, and she knew time was slipping away from all of them. "Charge!" Dr. Carter yelled, snapping Brenda back to the urgent moment. Her hand moved instinctively, but as she pressed down to deliver the shock, a shrill, piercing scream shattered the air, not from the child but from the crowd. Her head snapped up, dread pooling like icy water in her veins. The shadows advanced, unimpeded, coiling around the flailing limbs of terrified townsfolk. "Dr. Carter!" she screeched, but the words barely escaped her mouth. He was shouting something, a command, a warning, but it was lost to the rising tide of panic. Those ghostly figures were too close now, gliding as if propelled by forces unseen. "Brenda, we can't lose hope." Dr. Carter's voice cut back in. "Get the child stable. I'll try to distract them." She glanced back at him. He was unyielding, his face set against the horror surrounding them. He sprang from the child, desperation igniting in his eyes. "Everyone, move away. Get to safety." Brenda's pulse raced as she returned her attention to the AED, confusion clouding her mind. How could she be that beacon of hope when darkness swallowed them whole? A cold sweat dripped down her spine. Everyone depended on her. Then she remembered the pomegranates. The thought struck her like lightning. Could they hold the key? What if their juice, their seeds, the very essence contained within those fruits was more than just nourishment? What if they wore a potent magic, a way to fight back against these encroaching shadows? "Dr. Carter!" she shouted suddenly, inspiration sparking through her. The pomegranates? It could be the answer. "Get them," he called back, eyes flaring with recognition. "We need whatever, not just to fight them, but to understand why this is happening." With one last glance at the advancing shadows now closer, sharper, Brenda sprinted toward the table piled high with the fruits, each one a vibrant orb of untold secrets. Panic clawed at her throat as she shoved a bag into her arms, desperate to gather as many as she could. The intensity of the world around her felt potent, like a storm ready to unleash its fury. The market's energy swirled, bodies rushing in every direction, and her breath faltered as she felt the air shift, charged with that sinister energy lurking beyond the veil of the familiar. Suddenly, the temperature plummeted. A figure emerged from the shadows, taller, more defined, its presence sucking the warmth from the air. Its eyes glinted with a knowing that chilled her to the bone. "Brenda," it hissed in a twisted whisper, "you shouldn't have come here." Her heart raced. Who or what was standing before her? And what truth lay deep within the pomegranates she clutched tightly? She stepped back, jaw tightening, gritting her teeth against the fear. There was no turning back now. Whether they were meant to be a blessing or a curse, she had to find out. "Leave us alone," she shouted. And the figure merely laughed, a sound both hollow and filled with darkness, resonating in ways that threatened to fracture her resolve. As the confrontation built toward a boiling point, Brenda realized the stakes were far greater than she could have ever imagined. What had they summoned? And would the truth unravel their very existence? The shadows danced closer, hungry for chaos. Behind her, the crowd surged with fear, but Brenda remained fixed on the figure looming before her, poised for a truth that might change everything or destroy them all. In that charged moment, she wondered, was this really the end for them, or merely the beginning of an even darker chapter? The figure took another step forward, its voice curling around Brenda like a thick fog. "You think those pomegranates can save you? You don't even know what you're dealing with." Brenda clenched the bag tighter, feeling the cool surface of the fruits press against her palms. Panic bubbled in her chest as the figure's aura darkened, making the shadows around them writhe like angry serpents. "Stay away!" she shouted. The words felt weak even as they left her lips, swallowed by a haunting laughter that echoed in her ears. She could almost see the faces of onlookers behind her, frozen in terror, their breaths shallow. Would anyone dare to help her against this creature? "Brenda," Dr. Carter's strained voice broke through the haze of fear. He waved his arms wildly, trying to catch her attention amidst the growing chaos. "I can't hold them back forever. We need a plan." She glanced back, heart racing with the urgency of the moment. The gathered crowd was a mass of confusion and fear, many already stumbling back, but some had eyes widened in fear, every face reflecting the same question: what could save them? The figure gestured toward the chaos swarming around them, the shadows pulsating, dancing like flames about to engulf everything in their path. "You should have left well enough alone. The pomegranates belong to us now." Something sharp pierced Brenda's memory. A story she had once heard. Pomegranates were said to hold secrets, to be both a curse and a blessing. But what was real, and what was merely folk tale? If there was a risk, it lay deep within their properties. She couldn't let fear drive her. She had to act. In an instinctive burst of courage, Brenda hurled the bag of pomegranates at the figure. The fruit sailed through the air before exploding upon impact like bombs of red juice and seeds. The figure recoiled, shadows momentarily retreating as the fruit's essence burst apart, releasing a vibrant cloud that shimmered like an aurora across the market square. "Now!" Dr. Carter yelled, charging toward Brenda. His eyes were alive with determination as he pushed past the nearest figures. They were taken aback by the eruption of hope from the fruit. "We can turn this." The moment of distraction played at their advantage. Brenda's heart thundered in her chest as she took a step forward, intent on widening the gap between the shadows and the people trembling behind her. "Come on!" She beckoned back to the terrified crowd. "This way. We can break this." As she and Dr. Carter moved to corral the frightened townsfolk, the stillness hung thick in the air, like the moment before a storm. Shadows flitted toward them once more, curling like smoke around the edges of light that remained. "Do you still believe you can defy me?" The figure rasped, voice slithering closer again. "The pomegranates can't shield you from the truth, for it is the shadows themselves that grant power, and you will learn this lesson the hard way." Brenda felt the weight of those words settle deep in her bones. "We're not afraid of you," she shouted, battling against the rising tide of despair. The shadows crept closer, threatening to crush the hope she fought so hard to keep alive. "Fear," the figure hissed, "is your true home." With a fierce ripple of energy, the puddles of juice from the broken pomegranates began to glow, pulsing with light that pushed against the encroaching darkness. "Brenda! Do it now!" Dr. Carter urged. "I've got an idea, but I need you to focus." In that instant, she saw it, the potential in the chaos, the juice shining bright, the seeds glimmering with promise. Brenda reached for the nearest shell and scooped up a handful of seeds, feeling a surge of raw power pulse against her fingers. Wait, but it was too late. The shadows lunged, eager to snuff out the light and consume its spark. Brenda's instincts kicked in, and with a battle cry that shook the ground beneath her, she scattered the seeds into the oncoming tide of darkness. As they landed, everything shifted. A surge of bright energy erupted from them, pushing against the shadows as if the very essence of life and hope met the creeping dread in furious combat. The air exploded in sound of shrieks, of light, of people reevaluating their purpose in this unraveling reality. The figure howled, stomping forward, but then faltered, held back by the radiant energy wrapping protectively around Brenda and her gathering allies. "What have you done?" it bellowed, its voice splitting into shards of uncertainty. "We're not done yet," Brenda snarled, ready to fight back against the darkness threatening to swallow them whole. As the struggle intensified, Brenda realized she might have unleashed something magical, but at what cost? A crack of thunder echoed above, and the ground trembled beneath them. What more would they have to face before peace could be restored? In that moment, every eye turned toward the tumultuous sky. What would they see reflected in the storm brewing above, and would they have the courage to confront whatever lay beyond? Brenda stood firm, her heart racing as the shadows writhed around her, challenged by the glowing seeds she had unleashed. Dr. Carter stayed close, the struggle between light and darkness reflected in his eyes. "You brought this upon yourself," the figure snarled, its voice a twisted melody that echoed through the charged air. "You think you've triumphed, but you know nothing of the danger lurking in the shadows." Brenda could feel the heat rising in her chest, defiance igniting like a wildfire. "We won to let you win," she shouted back. "Not today." The ground trembled under their feet as the shadows shrieked, a cacophony of sound resonating through the park that rattled every nerve. But the trembling stretched beyond fear. It buzzed with a sense of burgeoning courage. Dr. Carter glanced at Brenda, determination knitting his brows. "We can harness this, Brenda. The energy of the fruit, it has awakened something deep within them. We need to focus our will. We need to unite the community." With every word he spoke, Brenda felt a flicker of hope born from countless shared fears. "Everyone," she called out, her voice rising above the chaos. "We need your strength. Believe in the light, believe in each other." The crowd, shaken yet resolute, drew closer. Elderly figures, once paralyzed by terror, now found the courage to take steps forward, finding strength in unity. The young and old alike gripped hands, filling the space with warmth. "Now's our chance," Dr. Carter shouted. "On 3, everyone focus your energy and aim it toward the shadows. Together." As they counted down, Brenda thought about the lives gathered around her, the children playing in the park, the families coming together, the friendships that blossomed through laughter. With spirit forging within them, Brenda felt the power swell, a collective heartbeat ready to face the darkness. 1, 2, 3. At the peak of their unison, they unleashed a surge, a wave of light that blasted forward, radiating with a golden intensity that swallowed the shadows whole. For a moment, the darkness faltered, screeching in defiance as it tore like paper against the brightness. The figure recoiled, anger transforming into terror. "No! This isn't over," it wailed, beginning to dissolve into mist as the light overwhelmed it. But Brenda pushed on, her determination unyielding. "You've underestimated us. This was never just about the pomegranates, this is about our spirit." The shadows fluttered like the last whispers of a dying wind, and with a final, piercing scream, they evaporated, leaving behind echoes of their threat. Silence fell heavily over the park. Brenda, now breathless and trembling, scanned the crowd around her. The fear had dissipated, replaced by astonished relief. Eyes wide, they looked at one another, whispered words of encouragement, and held on to the newfound strength born of courage. Dr. Carter brushed his hands together and took a deep breath, a smile breaking through the remnants of fear. "We did it. You did it," he said, turning to Brenda. "It takes a village to face such darkness." Brenda smiled back, feeling the warmth of gratitude and relief wash over her like a heavy, comforting blanket. The idea that they could inspire one another, even through fear, lingered inside her, lighting her heart. At that moment, old Mr. Jenkins stepped forward, clutching the arm of Mrs. Thompson. "You know, I never thought I'd say this, but we may need to rethink our fruit choices moving forward," he chuckled lightly, knitting brows relaxing. Laughter erupted, a chorus of overwhelming joy and relief spreading through the park, shattering the darkness that had once threatened their lives. Brenda caught Dr. Carter's eye again, and gratitude danced between them. But beneath the euphoria held a shared understanding that danger might always lurk just beyond the surface. With every victory, the awareness of responsibility lingered. The sun began to rise again, a hopeful hue painting the sky bright orange and red, mingling with the laughter and relief washing over the small-town park. Brenda knew this was the moment not just to put the past behind them, but to strengthen their resolve, to build a community that thrived against the uncertainty creeping ever close. They were ready for whatever came next. As she turned toward the crowd, a vibrant voice chimed out, "Let us keep this light alive. Let us keep each other safe." The words ignited encouragement, a collective promise that they would rebuild together. Brenda's heart soared. It was more than community now. It was a testament that no darkness could extinguish their spirit. They were united, and with that truth, anything was possible, even in the face of the unknown. With spirits high and hearts bound together, Brenda and the townsfolk marched forward. They had won this night, and their legacy would be one of resilience, collective strength, and the never-ending pursuit of hope. As they left the park, Brenda felt a swell of joy ripple through her. The darkness might come again, but they were ready. After all, it was only through the connection to one another that they found true power. And in that moment, Brenda knew, together, they could face anything. Now, friends, do you see how vital it is to be part of this community? You need to subscribe immediately to stay updated. This is the moment to show your support. Smash that like button now to energize the algorithm. Do you feel the excitement? Flood the comments section with your reactions and theories. I want to know what you think about the ending. And don't wait even one more second. Share this video with at least 5 friends who need to savor this conclusion. Let them experience the journey too.